Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Puppet Masters and Castle Freaks, the internet's leading all things Charles Band podcast. I am one of your hosts, Jared Hornbeck, coming to you from drug rehab. You guys can't see what I did there, but I did scare quotes with my fingers over drug rehab here in Brooklyn, New York. And who's trying to navigate this haunted house with me today?
Well, it's me. I'm Steve Guntley, and I really, truly hate being called Jackie. This is the podcast. It's all about face-ripping, sexy green energy blobs and guys in stocks doing the Jacob's Ladder thing. And that's because this is the podcast about Witchouse. That's one H, no spaces. Thank you very much. You could pronounce it Witchouse. I will not be mad at you. I believe it is technically, in France, they call it Witchouse. I'm making that up. But yes, we're talking about Witchouse from 1999. And we have a very exciting special guest joining us today. Who is with us today, Jared?
So the person who is joining us today is someone who you may have read some of their work for Rue Morgue and spoiler-free reviews. This is an actor, singer. I was going to say triple, but maybe actually like quadruple or quintuple threat coming on the show today. You may know him as the host of the Rick or Treat Horror Cast, an awesome horror podcast. I'm talking about Ricky J. Duarte. Ricky, how are you, man? Thanks for joining us.
Hey, I'm doing really well. I'm so grateful to you both for having me on the show. Although I do, in France, I believe it's pronounced Le Witchouse, if I'm not mistaken.
Le Witchouse. Oh,
yes.
Thank you for clarifying that. Yes. Yeah. And it's only, we only call it that if it's from the Witchouse region of France.
That joke.
Otherwise, it's a sparkling Witchouse.
Exactly. It's a sparkling
God damn it. I think we all wanted to make the same joke there, and Steve pulled out ahead there. But Ricky, thank you so much for joining us. So generally what we do with our guests here is we want to get to know you a little bit and let our listeners get to know you a little bit. So I've been a fan of your content, both the Rick or Treat Horror Cast on regular podcast apps, but also your presence on YouTube, like you and TikTok and all the socials. You're very active and you put out a lot of pretty amazing content. And so I think our listeners, as they get to know you now, we should maybe take it back a little while. And you work so much in horror. It's obviously a big part of your life. Like, when did that start for you? When did you first discover that you liked horror movies and that this was going to be something that became a passion as you got older?
Absolutely. Well, thank you first off for everything that you just said. And my content is actually from my social media manager, Stanley Martin, who does an incredible job. But as for myself, I'll take it back to the very first time that I remember seeing something scary. And it was as a little child. I must have been around 5 and sitting in my living room floor and watching King Kong, the original black and white.
Sure.
And being absolutely terrified. I was so afraid that when I went to Showbiz Pizza, I was afraid of Fats Geronimo, the gorilla that plays the keyboard in the animatronic band, the Rock-afire Explosion.
What a name.
And it's like Five Nights at Freddy's, but in real life. I was terrified that this animatronic gorilla was going to reach through my window and carry me away like I was Fay Ray as a child. And, from there, this fascination with the feeling of being scared was something that I would chase. And to this day, if a film can actually frighten me and actually have an effect on me, then I'm impressed and I have to applaud it, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It becomes increasingly rare the more horror that you watch, because you're just kind of identifying the tropes and things like that. It's rare that you're able to just kind of turn it off your brain and get scared in a way. So yeah, that's a real treat for us as well.
Even I both liked last year. Steve, every year Steve does like a 31 days, 31 horror movies in the month of October type thing, and he posts still frames from the movie and gives a little review and ranks them from number 1 to number 31. And a movie we both really liked last year was one of the most recent movies that actually legitimately scared me, which was the movie Watcher.
Oh, sure.
Watcher.
Yeah.
And that was like a feeling I hadn't felt watching a horror movie in a while. Like, I can sit back and I enjoy it. I'm pretty good at telegraphing when there's going to be jump scares. But that thing about that movie where there wasn't really jump scares, it was just a lot of suspenseful sort of like long takes of things. I had such a blast with it because I was like, man, I don't think I've had a movie affect me, like hit me in the bones like this since since I was young. So that it is a great feeling, and I can understand why you would want to chase feeling scared. Was there after King Kong, after you started to seek more things out, like what was some of the stuff you gravitated towards?
I remember The Haunting, 1963, being a
Oh,
huge.
Robert
It's
Wise, yeah.
yes, it's still a huge influence. It flip flops between that and Halloween being my favorite horror films, and they're vastly different films. But I think that kind
Yeah.
of defines my taste. I think that if there is any connecting thread between them, they both have this kind of gothic, mysterious feel to them. Halloween, sure, is a slasher, but it has this like lonely factor to it that at least I kind of pick up on. And certainly The Haunting is all about loneliness and feeling isolation.
Mm.
And so films like that have always been what have drawn me to horror. To this day, if we're talking about things that scare us, I'm tired of apologizing for it. I liked Skinamarink, and I'm not.
I liked Skinamarink too. I did.
Yeah, it got under my skin. The friend I was with wanted to leave like halfway through, and I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. Will I ever watch it again? No. It just did something to me. And whether it's a good film or a bad film, it gave me a reaction. I slept with the living room light on, because it just did something to me. So again, probably a movie about
a dark corner, I think, is what it was really.
For sure. And again, if you think that's probably a movie about isolation as well. So maybe I really need to dig in with my therapist and see what the hell's going on with me.
Are you, Ricky, are you a fan of Jack Clayton's The Innocents?
I'm not familiar.
So that one reminds me, when people talk about The Haunting, I always say The Innocents based on Turn of the Screw by Henry James.
Oh, sure.
And it's a really fantastic, Deborah Carr's in that movie, and really excellent. And I think kind of some similar themes in a way to The Haunting. So I would say that if you're a fan of that one, check out The Innocents if you haven't watched it.
I will. I'll do it tonight. That'll be my Friday night plans.
I'm curious too, because we usually let our guests kind of decide what movie they want to talk about. Why did you want to talk about Witchouse?
All right, so kind of an accident. First off, I started naming films that would be in your oeuvre, and it turned out that they had all been covered. Here's my deal: Full Moon. It's a bit of a blank spot in my horror knowledge. I have seen the staples. I've seen the big ones. I was too afraid to finish Puppet. I only watched Puppet Master straight through probably in the last 2 years. I was too afraid to finish it as a child. It was just the stuff of nightmares. So I see the title Witchouse on a list of potential films, and I made up in my mind what I thought I had seen. It was I probably put together movies like Witchboard and Witchery with Linda Blair and David Hasselhoff. I think I put together a bunch of really bad movies and created one in my head and thought that I had seen it, and I named it Witchouse. So, so this was not what I expected it to be at all.
Well, the funny thing about
so this was a blind watch for you too.
Yeah.
And
I even said last week on mic that this was one I was familiar with, and it was the same thing. I was taking elements from what I believe is the movie Netherworld. And I think also from an old Empire movie, which I now think I recognize as being Dream Maniac, which is one that will hit sometime in the near future. And I had an idea that Witchouse resembled more something from the early 90s classic period full moon movie, not something that was made that looks either like an ABC Family movie or the exterior opening shot of a Halloween cereal commercial.
It's a hornier Halloween town, basically, is what we got here. Yeah, it's I think that's kind of where we landed. I conflate this title with Witchboard a lot as well, and there's actually some kind of minor shared DNA between those movies, which I'll get into. Let me fire off a couple of stats about Witchouse. This was released June 22nd, 1999. It's directed by Jack Reed, air quotes, written by Matthew Jason Walsh, and stars Matt Raftery, Monica Serene Garnett, Ashley McKinney, Brooke Mueller, Dave Oren Ward, Dane Northcutt, and Ariana Albright. So Jack Reed is one of the many, many pseudonyms of our good old buddy David Dakota, who by 1999 had been making, I think this is somewhere between his 15th and 20th movie that he made with Charles Band, starting back from the Empire days. It's hard to keep track because I think some of his movies are sort of in the ether and are beneath the contempt of Wikipedia. Yeah, this one shot in Romania with Castello Films producer Vlad Panescu serving as the producer on this one. So this originally had a script written by Neil Marshall Stevens, but Charles Band wanted this movie to more closely resemble a 1988 film called Night of the Demons, which comes from the same director as Witchboard. So there we go. There's our DNA connecting it to the movie we all thought we were signing up for.
There it is.
So he threw that script out and decided to repurpose that into a 2001 movie called Stitches. And instead they brought in another writer to basically just do kind of a knockoff version of Night of the Demons, which if y'all haven't seen it, fun movie, fun, gory movie. Good time with that one.
One of my faves every Halloween.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was one of those. We talk a lot about the video store experience in here, and that was one of them that, like, I remember seeing that VHS box and thinking, "Oh, they're not allowed to show this on the cover. Like, that's too scary. Look at that demon lady on the cover. She's eating a lollipop made of a human brain." Like,
yeah, I think it was Night of the Demons 3 that was specifically. I think she was holding like a martini glass, and there were like eyeballs instead of olives, and I just remember being terrified. And but anyway,
boy, what I would give to have been to what a welcome presence some Linnea Quigley or Tawny Katane would have been.
Please.
I really did wish I was watching some Night of the Demons.
Because Witchboard is a fun ass movie.
That's fun.
It is. It's terrible, but it's like good terrible.
Minor. Yeah. A couple little trivia bits. This film is dedicated to actor Dave Oren Ward, who plays stoner dude Tony in this movie. Ward was stabbed to death in a traffic incident in 1999. He died at the age of 27. Very sad. He had finished wrapping this movie very shortly before that happened. He previously worked with David Dakota on The Killer Eye the year before this, which we will get to. You know, and this movie isn't.
We'll get there.
This movie is not really remembered as top tier Full Moon, but it did inspire a couple of sequels. There's Witchhouse 2, Blood Coven, and Witchhouse 3, Demon Fire. And really, the only other very notable person involved with the making of this movie is actress Brooke Mueller, who plays Janet. Brooke Mueller is better known to us now as the former very troubled Mrs. Charlie Sheen. She was married to him for about 3 years. She was definitely big in like the LA party girl scene. Like, she was friends with Paris Hilton and all those people, and has shown a history of drug abuse, some mental health issues. So she's kind of been in and out of rehab for a long time. This is really her only notable film performance, and boy, is it notable. It is a notable performance here. Definitely a lot going on here. So all right, well, let's just dive into this one, because there's really not a whole lot to say plot wise. This is a movie that kind of feels like it's taking a long time just to sort of get started. It's a 72-minute long movie called Witchhouse, and you don't see a witch until minute 50. So it kind of already feels like, all right, well, what are we doing? In the meantime, we have to spend a lot of time with, let's say, unprofessional actors. Let's be charitable. Now, David Dakota has said in the past, he's admitted as much in the past, that sometimes his casting process is, who's at the gay bar tonight? Who was at the gay bar?
I knew it.
Might want to be.
I clocked it. All right. Jack has a little sugar in his tank, if you know what I'm talking about.
a little bit, you know, and God bless him. Like he definitely has his own style, and he's got his type of actors that he puts in his movies, you know, and it's a lot of fun. But none of these guys really went on to be an actor in any kind of serious way. I think at the most we have a couple of handful of Law and Order episodes after this for some of these folks, and a lot of them retired straight after this. But yeah, so that is kind of his policy with a lot of his hiring choices. And, you know, hey, if it works, it works. But I feel like they didn't have a very strong story to really give them a chance to, you know, show their chops, so to speak.
No, I was watching this, and just this dialogue is like, if I'm looking at it as an actor, impossible to deliver with any sort of conviction, or, you know, trying to wrap your head around why people are saying these things. This movie also is the longest 72 minutes you can possibly imagine.
God.
But if everyone would just speak a little faster,
Thank you.
The slowest delivery of dialogue imaginable.
It feels like a direction. It feels like, okay, we've got a 45-minute movie here. We need at least 74 if we're going to like make it to a feature length. So really make a meal out of these scenes.
Yeah.
Really draw.
Well, and also this movie is coming right off the heels of Kevin Williamson mania.
Oh,
And these, I think, like the way that some of this stuff is delivered and some of these lines of dialogue, it's almost like there was a direction to ad-lib snappy dialogue.
Yeah.
And they don't really know how to do it. Like they're not really up to task for it. So it occasionally has that like poked up, like Kevin Williamson, like snappy, like Gilmore Girls-esque delivery of dialogue. But
like on Quaaludes. Yeah.
Right. It is bizarre. Like there's really no other way to describe the Brooke Mueller's performance in this movie. It's almost like performance art. It's almost like she's operating in a completely different medium.
Yeah.
Like there are ways that she delivers lines like she's angry at the words. Like it's hard to describe.
I kept expecting her to say something like, "What, you think you're better than me?" Like she's that girl, you know. She's so aggravated all the time.
Yeah, big Jersey girl on the train at 1 a.m. energy.
Yes.
You know? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't want to pick on her too much because I know she did have a lot of struggles with addiction and things like that. And there are some moments in this movie where she's slurring in ways that I don't think were a character choice. You know, I'm not trying to cast aspersions or make any kind of speculations, but it is almost more worth watching like a super cut of her line deliveries than actually watching the movie itself.
She also hilariously, for half of the time she's on screen, carries around a prop guitar.
Yeah.
But doesn't play it like... And
she's just holding it by the neck the whole time.
Right. Yeah. It's so obvious for anyone who plays any musical instruments that she's holding the phony prop guitar the entire time. Like they don't do a cut where it goes from real guitar to then prop guitar getting snapped. Like she's holding the one that's made of like press board.
Yeah.
And it's really obvious. And she does not know how to hold this thing, what she's supposed to be doing, and it's really evident. But she does do the thing all competent guitar players do. She calls it her axe.
Great. Yes. I mean, it'd be more authentic if she called it a git box, but you know, other than that, I think she kind of nailed that part. Yeah, but it's all a very thin premise to get a bunch of kids together in a house. That some witchy stuff is going to be happening in, you know, and similarly to Night of the Demons, it's pretense on a party. You know, you invite a bunch of people together that they haven't seen each other for a while, and we're going to party at this big mansion and we're going to have a great time. And then, spooky supernatural stuff is starting to happen all around, and it's unexplained. But it takes a really long time for any of that spooky supernatural stuff.
No, it's explained, Steve. It's that substandard wiring. It's damn explained. That wiring. Don't try to take the logic away from this film, Steve.
Damn that Massachusetts wiring. You know, I know they've got a problem with it. Yeah, that's right. I got that right. This is supposed to be in Massachusetts.
Yes, correct.
Yes,
it just looks so very Romanian. Like every part of this movie just looks very, even though it's mostly interiors, it's just like, yeah, this looks very Eastern European.
Very much so.
So I guess I'm trying to like single out any characters that we could identify kind of as our leads. I guess it would be Jackie or Jack, I guess, who's the bio. What was his career? He was like applied sciences.
Applied sciences, yeah.
There's applied sciences, and then there's kind of like, wow, I'm already forgetting everybody. I watched this. Jennifer is kind of the pretty blonde girl that's kind of set up as sort of the final girl type. She also has credits. Poor girl. I always feel bad when I see credits like this in somebody's IMDb. One of her other credits is in a movie called Tomcats, where she plays Barfing Girl.
Oh, God.
I think that's the last thing on her IMDb. I'm like, oh, man, poor girl. That can't be fun. And then we have Tony, the stoner guy, who's been hanging out with Janet, the rocker chick, the entire time. And then there's like a football jock and his girlfriend, and they don't super register. They kind of sneak off early in the movie to go have sex in another room. And then disappear for the majority of the running time, only to come back as like pointy tooth demons at the end of the movie.
Sexy pointy tooth demons at the end.
Oh, very, very sexy.
This movie has the trappings of like a 90s Skinamax erotic thriller with none of the sex whatsoever. This movie teases sex. It looks like they're going to have sex, and then there's no sex.
We've covered this a little bit before because David Dakota was in charge of Torchlight Entertainment, which was Full Moon's kind of erotic subdivision. They made movies like Test Tube Teens from the year 2000 and Femalian and things like that. And David Dakota directed a lot of those. And we were commenting at the time at how like this is an erotic movie that's almost like aggressively unerotic. It's almost aggressively unsexy, like almost as if they're making some kind of like bizarre performance art. And I think that continues in this movie as well.
I can't believe, like, I think about it sometimes, and I think about David Dakota's career and like all of these movies that he's made, and he was just churning these things out. And some of them are like this, like Witchouse. And this is the same man who directed Puppet Master 3.
Which is kind of the best one that we've, well, at least the best one we've encountered so far, you know, like it's a pretty fantastic movie. Yeah. So like when he's on, he can really kind of deliver. And I feel like we're entering into that era of Full Moon where everything is just getting a little bit more indifferent. A lot of the video store audiences are going away. The Paramount deal is over, and Charles Band is struggling to get the budgets to put these things together. So it becomes more of like a factory than it does a comic book. You know, I think that's the original model was Marvel Comics, and then it just sort of becomes, all right, let's churn them out, let's get them on DVD shelves because people won't know the difference. And so this is kind of at that turning point right there. And you know, so I'm really struggling to find something to latch onto with this movie because there's just so much nothing that happens. Like, you know, we're the Elizabeth is sort of the owner of the house, and she's like the spooky goth girl. And it's pretty obvious to everybody that something weird is going on with her, except for the characters in the movie don't seem to put that together. We do get like a little cold open teaser sequence where we see that there is a bit of a something in the house, and it kills the beefcakey boy and his girlfriend. And then we get an interminably long credit sequence where they chose an
this movie
font.
is 20%.
Oh my God.
Credits.
I kept the second I watched it a couple times this week. The second time I watched it, I kept like pushing the button 10-second skip, 10-second skip, and it's like a 4-minute long credit sequence.
It's so long, and like they chose this like glowing red font that is, it's okay, maybe it's the graphic designer in me, the kerning in it is all wrong, like it's all like too compressed, so I couldn't tell what any of the words were saying.
It is the standardist definition credit sequence that I've ever watched.
It is aggressively standard def. It
reminded me, but I will say, for all its faults, there was a moment watching the opening credits of that movie where I got sort of a genuine nostalgic feeling of sitting in my bedroom in the late 90s and watching stuff on like super standard def TV. Like this struck me very much like what a credit sequence of a cheap TV show would look like in the 90s. And I mean, you had your prestige stuff that was bigger budget, but there were definitely things where like a special, you know, movie that was airing on Halloween on, I'm trying to think of what channel. I said ABC Family before, and I feel like I stand by that, of just something that's like pretty cheap, and it's just like, oh well, it's Halloween themed, so we'll get it on the air. There was a moment when watching the credit sequence where it kind of took me back to how stuff looked, you know, 25 years ago, but it was hurting my eyes. It was so standard def that it was just like, it looked blurry to me. And I was like, am I having like a stroke at this moment? Or is this just really not only a really cheap movie, but also whatever the transfer that the Amazon Prime, or actually I watched it on Tubi actually, was just like really hard to read the names, even because the font color they chose on top of the red too. I was struggling. And
watching this on Tubi with commercials just dragged it out and made it even more painful for sure. But you say like something, you talked about premiering like a Halloween movie on ABC Family. Let's get into the fact that this is a Halloween party and the house is decorated for Halloween, and they somehow found pumpkins even though it's May Day. I like it. We're doing a Night of the Demons ripoff. I get that, but like just set it on Halloween. Why on May Day? are you throwing a Halloween party if it's not going to be a Halloween movie?
Yeah. What even was that? Yeah, that makes no sense to me. I have no idea where you even get pumpkins that early in the season.
I don't.
Yeah. And then you go to the year-round Halloween store, I don't know.
A wizard did it.
Exactly. A wizard did it. Yeah, a witch did it. But I feel like I'm really floundering here just because there really is so little that goes on. It's a lot of dialogue.
Well,
It feels like a movie that would.
Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah,
Finish up.
I'm just curious about how long this script actually is, because it feels like it's talky. It feels like it's got a lot of like dialogue and a lot of exposition and a lot of content, but it barely fits that 72 minutes. But it's still so very, very slow. Like, it's agonizingly slow the way everything's delivered. So I'm just wondering, is this like a 20-page script that's just like all single spaced or something? And
well, I happen to know this. I saw the original script, and it shouldn't really surprise anyone. It was written entirely on bar napkins.
Oh yeah, I could believe that. I can believe that. I have no doubt.
That would explain the slurred line delivery.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. I have some advice though for movie makers. I'm not qualified to give said advice, but I'm going to anyway.
Hey.
If you're making an incredibly cheap movie like this movie we're talking about right now, the worst thing that you can do is insert recycled footage from a much better movie to make me wish I was watching that movie, because
you pointed this out to me, and I didn't know what you were referencing. I haven't seen this movie, so
when we cut to the hell scene, and you said the Jacob's ladder effect thing, which is what I also consider it to be too. That was the first place that I ever saw that. Jacob's Ladder, one of my all-time favorite movies.
Sure.
Great film.
It is all the actual recycled footage from an amazing full moon movie that we will cover in a couple of months, Dark Angel: The Ascent, which is
okay. So that's all from a totally different movie.
That is from a completely different movie. It is the same footage, just recycled multiple times. So that same shot with the Jacob's Ladder face guys is used again. And I'm pretty sure that in Dark Angel, there's multiple shots of that. I don't think it's just the one shot, but they did use this one shot. And then the kind of like the little devil demons in hell are also from Dark Angel, which is a super fun full moon movie. When we get there, I'm really excited, Steve, to see how you feel about that one, because it's one of the times when I feel like full moon has this thing where every once in a while, like we talked about Doll Man and we've talked about Puppet Master 3, and we haven't done an episode proper on it yet, but Subspecies 2. And I feel like there's times when full moon says, hey, we're a B movie company. We're making a B movie, but we're going to class it up as much as we can. And I feel like everything about Dark Angel really works. Like the tone, I think, is right. It's fun. It looks good. Like it's just full moon really at the height of their powers during their tail end of their classic era. And to see it in this movie, because you can tell it's like it very much goes from this looks shot on videotape to then something clearly shot on film. And it's a jarring cut, because if you didn't know, you might think like, oh, wait a minute, like this doesn't look too bad. Maybe that cold open scene, or maybe this house interior is just, maybe I left the motion smoothing on my TV on or something like that. But no, it's literally just the scenes from those movies. And man, when that came on, that's what kind of told me like, oh, I don't think this is the movie I thought it was. And I texted Steve. I'm like, I cannot believe they're just using recycled footage from Dark Angel: The Ascent in this movie, because all I wanted to do was turn it off and watch Dark Angel: The Ascent.
Yeah. Oh man.
That's
or just turn it off in general. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sure.
I knew like 3 minutes in when the puka shell necklace made its appearance on that guy. That was it. That was the direction this movie was headed.
Oh, the Pooks were all in 1999. Absolutely.
Yeah. The cast of this movie is a sentient Hollister store.
Yeah.
Kinda. Yeah,
sure.
no, that's a good way to put it. Yeah. Yeah, I was really worried, Ricky, that this was going to be like a sacred movie for you, and I was worried I was going to come in here and be dogging on it. But
It's so funny because I was worried that this was one that you guys were really excited to talk about too. So I'm glad it worked out for all of us.
We
yeah,
all
no,
lagged
okay,
in
all right,
sleep days.
we're all suffering together. Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
it's hilarious.
I mean, okay, so I was curious to hear somebody try and make a defense of this movie too, because I was having such a hard time like latching on to anything positive. You know, I guess though the witch makeup when Lilith LaFay finally shows up in the end of the movie, witch makeup is competent.
Passable.
It is, but I've seen it before. I've seen it in Buffy. I've seen it on The Lost Boys, and I've seen it done.
Yeah.
I think this movie is made up of a lot of moments that have just been done before, much better.
Yeah. The one kill that kind of stood out for me was poor Tony getting his head ripped off. You know, that's
Yeah.
kind of the one little moment of gore that was sort of effective. But then they kind of undid it by like, it's got this great kind of like 3-shot where it's just like from a distance, and then close enough that we can just tell that like it's just the actor laying on the carpet.
Laying down.
Like, it's like severed head, actor laying on the carpet. Yeah, it's like, all right, well, come on, you ruined that.
Well, there are a lot of amateurish performances in this movie, but I will give something resembling a compliment to Ashley McKinney Taylor, who plays Elizabeth, the girl who has summoned them. I mean, she sort of understands what movie she's in.
Yeah.
And I think she delivers those lines with a little bit of attitude that I appreciated, because I think she sort of she had an idea of what acting choice she was going to make, and it was appropriate for the movies that she's in. And I also think I found the Matt Raftery to be kind of insufferable, but I thought Monica Snow, who played Jennifer, was more passable. Although I do feel like there were times when like they were really they were talking to each other and it's seemingly competing with one another on who could show more teeth while they delivered lines, which was a little weird. But I thought, like, I don't know, she played kind of, you know, I was fooled. They did the old Not Another Teen movie and Pygmalion and My Fair Lady thing, She's All That thing on me, where I thought she was an ugly beast because she had glasses on.
Oh yeah.
When the glasses came off, I went, "Oh, she's an attractive young woman." Okay.
And she does like the squinty, shy smile thing as the glasses are coming off too. God.
And her hair fell down too. It's like, wait a minute, what? Yes, no, very alarming. Yeah. I mean, I'll give it to you on Ashley McKinney. Like she is playing this like she's in a regional haunted house,
which is good, which is enough.
It sounds like a sideways. It sounds like a sideways compliment, but like everyone else is playing this like they have no idea where they are. Like no, they seem very confused by what kind of movie they're in and what they're doing entirely.
Yeah.
And I never really want to pick on actors too much because it's the director and it's the script ultimately. Like,
right.
If you're reading this script, if you're hearing this dialogue, it's like, how are you going to deliver these lines? How are you going to make these sound convincing? And I think they're doing what they can with the resources they have. But you know, I think I just push against the decision to like, if you need to pad out a movie, don't pad it out with like long scenes of characters you don't care about sitting around and talking. Like, a movie like this needs to kind of own its lane. So just like everybody's topless, everybody's falling on knives, everybody, you know, fill it with some like sleaze, fill it with some trash and some carnage, you know, like lean into the full moon aesthetic that you've got, and don't assume that we're going to care about these.
I'm going to say something and it's going to sound crazy. I could have used like the sleaze of the Bongiverse in this movie.
Oh boy,
that's controversial.
Yeah, that's a hot take.
I mean, Steve and I to this point, however many episodes in we are, still have Evil Bong as the bottom of the barrel of all the movies. But at least that aspect of Evil Bong was sort of delivering what you would expect in having, you know, topless girls and having it take place in sort of an alternate universe strip club. We don't get anything. It's so tame that, like, you mentioned Buffy before, which I feel like is a good comparison because there are moments when like the makeup reminded me of Buffy and the standard definitionness of it all reminded me of Buffy. But it's like Buffy, like, that was so much more an envelope pushing than this movie is. I mean, this is so much tamer by comparison.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just the fact that like
Yeah.
Evil Bong went weird with it, and I wish that this one went weird. This one does not go weird at any point. It's like, oh, okay, it's a movie called Witchouse. We expect there's going to be a witch at the end of this movie. There is one. Okay, does she do anything super weird? No, not really. She's just kind of like a big scary witch.
Floats around a little bit.
Floats around. Yeah. No real twist on that formula. There
Not
nobody
at all.
nobody plussed it up or anything or said like, okay, maybe she's a witch, but I don't know, she's got a tail and the tail can hold a knife. I don't know. Do something weird with it.
This movie gives me, I find it inspiring in that it gives me hope that my own screenplay will one day be picked up and produced. If this can do it, maybe I can.
It can't be worse. There's no possible way. I don't believe. Yeah.
And if we talk about this movie taking too long, even when Lilith the witch is destroyed at the end, that whole sequence of her being electrocuted takes too long. Like she's being shocked for at least a minute, if not longer, in something that should have been a quick and effective, climax.
Right. And we're not really getting that as like a payoff. It's like, finally, the evil that's been stalking us the whole movie is dead. Like, we're not even really getting that because she just popped up at the end. Like, she was not this like looming existential threat over the movie. She's just like, oh, hi, I'm here. Like she didn't really do that much. Really, the zombified jock and his girlfriend were the scarier character, the more proactive, like enemy characters.
Right. When they pop up like that, I was starting to think like, okay, like do this a little more. Like, let's see some characters reanimate. Let's see them become demons. Let's get a bunch of demons in here. But it doesn't really do that. And it's like, it's so funny to me, like watching this movie, like one thing that never popped in my head at any point during all of this was potential franchise.
Yeah. And from at least based on the IMDb ratings, this next two movies are better, if not good. They are better. And they are not David Dakota. It's a different director taking over the next two. I think the same actress playing Lilith does continue on for the rest of the series as well. And the third movie is Brink Stevens. So, we got something to look forward to at least. But
yeah, that's a welcome presence.
Can we trust that IMDb rating? Because if you look at a TV show with a low score, individual episodes will have high scores because fans of it do that. So is it just that the few people that like this movie are giving the sequels high scores?
I'm wondering. I'm curious. I mean, the sequels.
Intrigue.
If by high scores, I'm talking like, I think the first one has like a 3.7, the second one is like a 4.8, and the third one has like a 4.1. So they're still not like all timers. I don't think there's not many people who could consider themselves super fans of this series. But but hey, at least there's a slight improvement, maybe.
Do you intend to watch them?
Oh, we're going to get to them. Yeah.
It is in our mission statement that if it exists and it is produced or distributed by Full Moon or Empire or any of Charles Band's other subsidiaries, our goal is to cover it. I mean, we're looking ahead at our spreadsheet of movies, and it is long.
Yeah.
And so it's like we're going to be, if this continues to be a successful endeavor, we're going to be doing this for a long time.
Good.
I may pitch those two as a single episode. We'll do Witchouse 2 and 3 in one. Yeah. I mean, honestly, we could have done the whole trilogy probably in one, but that would have been a tough sit. Like even 3 short movies, like you said, Ricky, like watching this on Tubi or Freevee, which I think is where it's available now. I didn't see it on the Full Moon channel. Watching it without ads makes this a pretty interminable experience.
It's not on the Full Moon channel, and I had to correct myself before when I said that because I audibly laughed out loud because it shows up in the Full Moon channel, but only as, or it shows up, I should say, on Prime, but only as to rent or buy. So I click on it, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't know if I want to watch this with ads. Maybe I'll just rent it. The only option to rent it was for $1.99 standard definition.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? If I'm going to watch
it. They mail the VHS to your house. Yeah.
Like, if I'm going to watch it and it's going to look like shit, I'm going to at least skim through the Full Moon channel on Tubi and like break it up with some ads. Because Ricky, you said before how it was like watching this with ads really like padded out and made it feel long. I agree with you. But I also think watching this with ads made it feel way more authentic because
Yes.
this feels so much like a late 90s property that
Yeah.
you would
Yeah.
watch on TV.
Commercial
So I'm
breaks
like,
for
yeah.
sure.
So I was like sitting there, and when the ads would start, it just felt natural because I
Yeah.
felt like I'm watching like a weird made for television special. And it just, that felt like the proper way to view it.
That's
Plus,
a
we
great
got
point.
little brief like flashes of competent filmmaking when those commercials came on. You know, we got to see like, oh, okay, yeah,
So
no, this scene is well lit.
I wanted to
This laundry commercial looks very nice.
I want to take this opportunity to say we're obviously we're poking at fun at this one, and we do a lot of times come out and say that like that's not our goal here. Usually is like we like to give everything a chance and come to everything analytically and have a discussion about things that might be overlooked. And it's like we don't want to come out and appear to people like we're just like hating on it and we're just
No.
trying to sit here and nitpick everything and make fun of it. But it's really hard not to with a movie like this, and because this to me, I think this is indicative of Full Moon in this period also, is that it was just such an attitude of like, make it quick, make it cheap. And I don't think any real thought or care was put in it. It feels like a cynical product to get a VHS or at this point, a DVD probably
early DVD.
onto a shelf and then move on to the next one. And because that was the approach to getting these things made, I don't feel so bad sitting here and nitpicking and saying and pointing out all of the issues with it, because I don't think it was made with care. I don't think anybody was too concerned about this particular finished product. Like there are other movies that are bigger swings and misses that we'll cover from the classic era of Full Moon, or some of the Empire ones we have left over, where we might not think it's a good movie and there might be things about it that are huge gaping flaws that you can't avoid. But we'll approach those, I think, a lot more lovingly than we are with this one. Like nobody gave a shit about this thing and it's really obvious. So I don't feel bad making fun of the performances, because like nobody was really trying to get into character or even really like deliver a performance.
Well, and the
because
movie's
this-
got to kind of,
Go ahead.
it's got to kind of meet us halfway, right? You know, like
Yeah.
it's got to,
right, exactly.
like we're not here just to dog on it. Like we're not a bad movie podcast, even if we are talking about bad movies from time to time. But the movie's got to put forward a little effort on its own, and I feel like there's just so little effort that went into making this a passable product that it's a little frustrating. You know, it's not even really one of those bad enough to dog on it, because there's just kind of nothing that happens in this movie. Like there are a couple of the brightest moments are where you could just sort of laugh at how amateurish the performances are, but that's not why I go to that's not why I like bad movies. Like I don't like picking on specific people. I like picking on some of the creative choices or laughing at like some inept special effects or something like that. You know, I don't like picking on people because there's so many factors that go into those performances. So it doesn't even really qualify as like a fun bad movie for me.
There is one thing this movie has going for it though. And if you listened to our episode last week on Demonic Toys 2, we pointed this out. No CGI blood spray.
No, there's none of that.
Thank
that.
goodness, because
Can't stand it. It still doesn't look good in 2023.
No, they've never quite cracked that. Like it always just looks like somebody's drawing Alvin from Alvin and the Chipmunks on you after the fact, you know, like it just looks bad. Like it looks goofy.
It's really bad. And in Demonic Toys 2, it's like maybe some of the worst I've ever seen. And
Wow.
we talked a little bit about that in the episode. And I was thankful that we didn't get that, but yeah, but we don't really get any attempt at weirdness. We don't get really any attempt at gore. I think the way you save a project like this is you play to those things. It's like, okay, we've got some amateurish performances. We don't really have much of a movie here in terms of plot. Like use what little budget you have to supply some gore on these kills and have that be where your money spent. I mean, we all know, like, it's pretty evident from the budget of this movie that this cast was paid in sandwiches.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you definitely get that feeling. But we definitely do appreciate Ricky taking the chance on this movie. Like a lot of the recognizable like Full Moon movies have sort of we've either covered them or they've been claimed or anything like that. So we're really appreciative of people who are willing to kind of dive into the muck with us and see exactly what it is we find and just kind of roll the dice and see where it ends up. And I'm sorry it came up with a critical miss for you this time.
And so Demonic Toys, the original one, we talked about it in the episode last week, how we were kind of underwhelmed. I had seen it before, Steve. You hadn't, right?
No.
So I had seen it before and I was familiar with it, but I always sort of felt a little bit like I love the character designs, but some of the storytelling beats, I really don't really understand why they made some of the choices that they did. And I feel like the movie underdelivers a little bit with its promise of the demonic toys and how they use them. But as we talked about that first movie last week and talking about Demonic Toys 2, I started to pick up on like, oh, there's that cool dream sequence stuff. And there is some good practical effects and John Carl Buechler designs and all that stuff. And so it rose up in my estimation a little bit. And I can understand why there would be like Full Moon fans who discovered the show in their youth who would really hold like the original Demonic Toys as a sacred cow. I have a hard time believing that there are like true defenders of this era of Full Moon.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking about it and it's like we're saying a lot of negative stuff, but it's like I can't really imagine that when people think of Full Moon, they're like, oh yeah, I love Witchouse. I love the Killer Eye. I love that stuff. It's like, no, they go to stuff from the early 90s. And I can understand why they would hold on to that. So Ricky, I almost feel like I'm almost like, do you want to reschedule? You want to come back for something else? Like,
I would be happy to listen. And I'm always happy to dig through the bottom of the barrel and try to find the gem of a horror movie, even if I have to sit through Witch House after Witch House after Witch House, which doesn't mean I'm going to watch the rest of them. I might
penciling you in for Witch House 2 right now.
Oh boy. I do think that this movie had a little bit of, I could maybe visit the next two if it were kind of background as I was doing something else, just to be a completionist and get through them. I don't think it's going to do anything impressive,
No.
It's not going to bring anything new or exciting to my life. So now that I've said it out loud, no, I'm not going to do that. I will not be watching it.
No, I think you could find better ones, and in defense, like the same year that this movie came out, we also got Blood Dolls, which we watched recently and had an amazing time with. Have you seen Blood Dolls?
I have not.
Check out Blood Dolls.
Okay.
It's amazing. It'll
Check
blow
out
your mind.
Blood Dolls, but also, have you seen Head of the Family?
No.
So
yeah,
I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about as a horror journalist right now.
Not at all. I would say do those two as like a companion pieces. Like if you want,
they're
just
sort
like
of like spiritual cousins to one another, and not proper sequels per se, but they share a lot of DNA.
Cool. Right.
And I would say watch those two, do a double feature of Head of the Family and Blood Dolls, and they're both like that. Those are like Full Moon home runs to me. Like they're so much fun.
They're great.
That came out the same year as this, and
they are Freaks meets Emmanuel meets Tennessee Williams. They're insane.
Oh, wow.
They're so much fun. Definitely worth checking out. But again, thank you so much for diving down to the bottom of the barrel with us and taking a chance on this one. We definitely want to have you back on another time to talk about hopefully a better movie, because you're awesome and your show is so cool. Can you tell people where we can find all of your stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Across all social platforms, I am at Rick or Treat Pod. On YouTube, type in Rick or Treat Horrorcast. Make sure to include Horrorcast because otherwise you won't find me. So TikTok, Instagram. I'm on X, I guess, question mark.
How much is anybody on X anymore?
I have an account on X. I don't know that I'm on it. And then check out my writing for Rue Morgue. By the time this comes out, I'm interviewing Eli Roth in a couple of days. That should be published. I just interviewed Damien Leone. And I should be interviewing an Oscar-winning screenwriter who made a very feminist-forward horror movie 15 years ago and has another feminist-forward horror movie coming out next year, whose name I shouldn't divulge.
Ooh.
But things are taking off.
Together.
Yeah, things are taking off, and I'm really excited to share this writing and my experience with people and my listeners. So please come trick-or-treating with me.
Absolutely. I strongly recommend doing exactly that. And thank you so much for being here and for enduring this one with us.
Yeah, absolutely. You're a real trooper for not messaging me and saying fuck you and demanding another movie. So I thoroughly appreciate that. And listeners, if you appreciate what we do, then when you get a chance, jump onto Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you are listening, leave us a 5-star rating and perhaps a brief review if you feel so inclined. If you want to follow the show on our social media, we are on Instagram at puppetmasters_castlefreaks. You can follow me at _Giallo_Jerry or Steve at Minotaur Matador. Definitely check out all of our socials. We are on X as well. We will be a little more active on YouTube. We've been sort of uploading like audio versions with thumbnails of the episodes, but we do want to get into making some more YouTube content and perhaps even venturing into TikTok to bring some more people into the show that way. But we are not the only show that Steve is involved with. So Steve, tell our listeners where else they can hear you if they feel so inclined.
Absolutely. You can find me on Cinemarcade. That's my podcast where we are watching a movie and playing the video game based on it and discussing both and seeing where those two worlds intersect and collide. When this one's coming out, we're coming up on the end of our Alien run. We're doing the whole Alien quadrilogy, a word I still hate, but Alien owns the term quadrilogy, so they can have it. We're coming up on the end of that. I think their Alien Resurrection episode will be dropping in the same day as this episode. So excited to revisit that absolutely wild ass movie and play the PS1 video game, which I've never played before. And then next week on this show, you're going to want to check it out because we are going back to the latter days of the Empire run, like right on the cusp of full moon dawning. And that is for a movie called Arena, a movie I have not seen. Looks like a fun kind of riff on the Gorn episode of Star Trek. So I'm excited to get into that.
This is a fun one. It's giving me an excuse to break out my Empire of Screams box set from Arrow Video to revisit this one and all of the amazing features. And we really couldn't go back to the Empire of Screams box set without bringing someone from the Arrow Video podcast on the show to talk about it with us. Shay Mossifin, who is she's awesome. She is going to be joining us to talk about Arena. Super excited, listener. So definitely tune in next week for Arena. And yeah, just subscribe, keep following, keep downloading the show. You guys have made this into this quick success that it has become. And if you want to email us with questions, comments, anything, you can reach us at puppetmasterscastlefreaks@gmail.com. Again, thank you to Ricky for taking the time out to join us, and we will see you all next week for Arena. Stay tuned.
Witchouse.
All right.